Deputy Speaker, Honourable Gezi, Honourable Ministers who are here present, Honourable Members of Parliament, the Government Central Bank and all other invited guests. I recognize all of you and good morning. My task this morning is really to give a kind of narration on the environment that is around us domestically, globally, and also give you a sense of our position on the fiscal framework for the budget for 2023 and the key assumptions behind it. I'm going to use slides as I go through this presentation. The next slide, please. That's the outline. You may be able to read that, you may not, but let me go through the presentation. Colleagues, the global economy is poised for a slowdown in economic growth. And that is a major risk to everyone around the world, around Africa. I came from the World Bank IMF annual meetings. We were there the whole of last week, and that is the message, that we are fastening seatbelts. The global economy is headed for an economic slowdown. We expect this slowdown to actually begin in 2022 into 2023. So in 2022, we expect a growth rate of 3.2% for the entire global economy, from a growth rate of down from the growth rate of 6% in 2021. Some of the numbers that may be relevant. For instance, if you look at the UK, the advanced economies first, we expect the growth this year to end at 2.4%, down from 5.2% last year. The UK, for example, a growth rate of 3.6%. It might even get lower given some of the issues that they've been going through in terms of their recent economic policies. Or in the United States, the expectation is actually negative economic growth, if not a recession. In the EU, again, a slowdown to a growth rate of 3.2%. I mean, I'm just talking about 2022. 2023 figures are actually worse than what I have just presented here. Now, for the strong performers such as China and India, we expect growth rates in India to come down about 3.2% this year, end of the year, and increase slightly in 2023 to 4.4%. And that's China. For India, we expect a growth rate of 6.8% in 2022 and a drop to 6.1% in 2023. And then for Africa, I'm just going to highlight two countries so that you can get the context. For Nigeria and South Africa, which are the two largest economies in Africa, accounting for more than half of the economies as GDP. We expect the growth in South Africa to slow down to about 3.2% this year, and for South Africa to slow down to about 2.1%. Next year, again, the growth rates are lower. So I'm just giving you a slew of figures to really support the narrative that economic growth is slowing down. Why is this the case? It's really about the specter of, first of all, the COVID is the source of everything in terms of slowing down global supply chains. Then we're followed by the global tensions triggered by the Russia-Ukraine tensions. And then the reaction in terms of the energy prices. Oil prices are shooting up. And then the prices of fertilizer are increasing. General increase in food inflation. And then the central bank and fiscal authorities reacting appropriately by raising interest rate to deal with the specter of inflation. All that put together is what will slow down the global economy. And you can see where I'm headed in terms of our own projections for Zimbabwe, which I'll come to right at the end. So for the entire African continent, we expect a growth to slow down to 3.6% this year, but a slight improvement in 2023 because of certain factors, to 3.75%, but it's all below the 4% initial target prior to which was projected in the first quarter of this year. Looking at inflation, maybe maybe go into detail, but I'll just pick out, let's say, the United States, for example. Inflation is already at 8.1%. UK is at 9.1%, it's not closer to. In fact, food inflation is actually 10%. This is the highest inflation that these two countries that I'm singling out as an example, this is the highest inflation they are experiencing in 40 years. This is a record. And their interest rates are also going to be at the highest level in 40 years. So it's quite a serious situation that is being experienced around the world. In countries such as Nigeria, coming closer home, we're expecting inflation is around 19%. In South Africa, it's around 6.7 or about 7%. So clearly, we have a global inflation challenge. And this inflation is being transmitted into Zimbabwe. We are importing quite a bit of this inflation. For at least half of the inflation that we see locally is imported. Then we move on to commodity prices, which are a key aspect of this global picture. Colleagues, we've seen a substantial increase in commodity prices. Some of it has been to our advantage, some of it has been to our disadvantage. What has been to our disadvantage is really the prices of fertilizer, the prices of cooking oil, prices of fuel, and I think we are aware as to how we'll try to manage at least the price of fuel in terms of impact and pass-through by continuously varying appropriately the fuel levy of 12.7 cents, dropping it to 0 at times, reducing it wherever necessary to cap the sharp increase in the global fuel prices. So for fertilizers, of course, it's not as easy to manage the prices of fertilizer. In fact, for fertilizer, there are two problems. One is just being access to supply, just the supply at whatever price, and then the price of fertilizer itself. So we've been very successful at laying our hands on the fertilizer on time, but clearly the price has been an issue, and this is an issue globally. The prices have gone up almost 50% in the fertilizer space. Where we've benefited, colleagues, Mr. Speaker said, is in the area of minerals that we produce. So we've seen prices holding firm in the main. We've seen a drop here and there, fluctuation here and there, but in terms of historical trends, the prices are holding firm, and our mining sector has benefited enormously from this aspect. So that's a brief picture of the global economy, and I'm happy to spend more time on it. And I'll move on to the domestic economy. If you go back to 2017, 2018, right through 2019, 2020, to the present 2022, 2023, what you see is a growth profile for a gross domestic product that is U-shaped. That is, we went through positive growth for the 2017, 2018, as you can see, and then negative growth initially due to the climate change shocks we experienced in 2019, and then the COVID pandemic shock in 2020, and then we had almost a spectacular recovery last year. I'm happy to report that we projected a growth rate of 7.8% for 2021. We're still finessing the figures. As of last week, the growth rate for 2021 has been confirmed to be 8.5%. So it's higher than the 7.8. So it's 8.5%, so coming from a high base. Now, for 2022, you recall that in the midterm budget, I was projected...
Can you just indulge me on the point of order? Can you just indulge me on the point of order?
Yes, Honorable Mliswa.
I'm a bit disturbed that I don't see ministers, deputy ministers here at an event like this, and I'm asking myself, where are they? What is more important than this? Where are the ministers? Where is the, no, you are the deputy ministers, yes, the cabinet minister. You are not even enough. So how can we be doing this all the time when they are responsible for execution? They are the executive. We've done this over and over again, Chair. Why are we here? Where are the ministers? Parliament, they don't come. This is the budget. It's talking about the global economy. When do they comprehend that? This is a one-sided soccer match, and it's a waste of time. Minister, where are your colleague ministers here?
I think we need to ask.
No, but they must be here. We cannot continue this session without the ministers being here. They are the executive. We are tired of this, Chair. You must make a thing. They must go. They must come here. Where are they? This is the budget.
Honorable Mliswa, I think you have made a very important point, which we take note. The Honorable Speaker is hearing this for himself, but I totally agree with you. We need to see the same people that elected the executive here. So you are going to discount it. Thank you. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. So, colleagues, so with this U shape in the
sorry, Chair. The Speaker is here. And I think it's only proper that it's on record. In Parliament, he made a decision on them. We welcome that. Even the Honorable Vice President was there. In fact, they must be ashamed. The Honorable Vice President was in Parliament discharging his duties professionally. So the Speaker must answer to this as the head of Parliament, that where is the executive? Because there's no point us continuing. It's a waste of taxpayers' money. We cannot continue like this. We must adjourn until they all come here. They must come here. We cannot continue like this all the time. This is serious business for the country. But the Speaker, but we cannot continue when they are not here.
Honorable Mliswa, you will not have a one-on-one. Can you take your seat? I'm communicating with the Speaker.
We cannot have this. We are tired of this. We are tired of this. They were given 500,000 housing allowances, 350, 2 cars. Where are they? Where are they? They've got the best package here. When they are sick, they fly. We go to Christmas, which is close.
Honorable members.
Let's adjourn.
No, it must adjourn, they must come. Wherever they are, they must come. Whether adjourn to tomorrow, that's okay, they must come. Mona is here, always. Mona is here. My ministers of state, they are here. Nana.
Thank you. Can you order? Due process was made. Announcements were made last week publicly. Letters were written to each and every minister to come. And there are some ministers who have availed themselves here, as well as deputy ministers, in addition to ministers of state and for provincial affairs and devolution. As far as the administration of Parliament is concerned, we have done our part and we cannot be faulted for that. Secondly, the Honorable Vice President was there in the House, and we did make an announcement. Again, the Honorable Vice President indicated that they will ensure attendance of ministers to attend to parliamentary processes in terms of Section 107, subsection 2 of the Constitution. So we proceed with the ministers that are here. This is a national issue, and Parliament is the front line. I'm sure through the social media they understand the concerns of the members of Parliament, and we share. But this is a national process, and I want to believe order, and I want to believe that the honorable ministers are hearing our call that they must be here during the process. So we proceed accordingly. We proceed accordingly. That's my ruling. I am acting in the national interest. Your concerns are shared, and I agree with you. But, honorable member, I'll ask you to leave the House. Yes. Can you sit down? Can you sit down? Honorable Mliswa has made a valid point. Can you sit down? Can you sit down? Honorable Mliswa has made a valid point. And the Clerk of Parliament, order. The Clerk of Parliament is instructed to conduct the Chief Secretary to deal with the matter immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I will now ask the Honorable Minister of Finance to proceed with this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we expect growth in 2022 to the order of 4.6%. And here, of course, we're taking into account the performance of our last agricultural sector season, as well as robust performance for mining and recovery in the tourism and accommodation sectors. Next slide, please. I now turn to some key sectors. I won't cover all of them. Chairman and Mr. Speaker, just agriculture, for example, we expect a negative growth rate this year of -5%. We know what happened to the season in the 2021-2022 season. Already, we were below what we projected. At least it was below the 2021 figure, where we had a record, output, grains output. But I'm pleased to report, I think the Minister of Agriculture has already done so before this August House, that our winter wheat program has been very successful. I think, are going to produce the highest tonnage of wheat that we've experienced in the last 20 years. Well over 360,000 metric tons of wheat this year. We want this record, indeed, performance to continue. But there we are. I think it's fair to say that as we speak, really we've achieved a sense of food security in the agricultural space, even in terms of our reserves, grain reserves and GMB, with adequate reserves to last us until the end of March next year, as we put in to support the vulnerable through the food support program. The mining sector, at the risk of repeating, again, we've seen steady prices, an increase in our gold deliveries to Fidelity, steady platinum group prices in the main, chrome, nickel, diamond prices. All this augurs well for the sector. We've revised the growth rate for that sector upwards to 9.5%. On manufacturing, the manufacturing sector is expected to grow at 3.6% in 2022 from an initial budget projection of 5.5%. We've taken it down. We expect the high interest rates, which are necessary for stabilization of our economy and currency and dealing with inflation. Those interest rates will have some impact on the sector, the manufacturing sector, among basically other measures we've taken to constrain domestic demand. So this will impact the sector negatively, therefore reducing the growth rate to 3.6% from the 5.5% that was initially projected. Let me say something about the exchange rate development. Colleagues, we've taken various measures, repeat them in probably the next slide, which is coming through, measures to really stabilize our currency. We've seen a convergence in the willing buyer, willing seller rate, and the black market and parallel market rates. And this is a good development, because by narrowing that gap, we're actually narrowing the arbitrage opportunities that will drive speculation in our economy, driving inflation. We're pleased that this gap has narrowed through a cocktail of measures, which I'll repeat in the next few slides. Needless to say that the movement in the exchange rate is really what has been driving inflation in terms of a domestic factor. The foreign factor has imported inflation. The domestic factor has been the exchange rate. That's what has been, pushing up our inflation. The red line there is the year-on-year inflation, and the blue line is the month-on-month inflation. It's quite clear that the month-on-month trajectory is what really leads the year-on-year figures. So what we've seen of late is with that big jump in the month-on-month inflation in the month of May and June this year, but that has been tapering down, which is most welcome. So in September, month-on-month inflation is now down to 3.5%, from as high as 30.7% in June. Year-on-year figure is currently at 280.4%. That's down from 285% in August. So already we're seeing a tapering down of a sharp drop in month-on-month inflation and a follow-through from the year-on-year inflation downwards, and this is a welcome development indeed. Just to remind you of some of these measures, I've presented some of these measures in Parliament. We've made public pronouncements. His Excellency has done that, and the leaders have done the same, the government has done the same, and all together. Colleagues, you know what we did in terms of stabilizing the economy. We've now basically dealt with the issue of the backlog in our auction. The governor committed to this, and that has been followed through on this. That issue is under control. And then in terms of, I talked about the unification or convergence in the official exchange rate versus the power rate. This has happened. And then also making sure that retailers stick to prices that are within the law, obviously linking those to willing buyer, willing seller, but within a margin, a 10% variation margin. We've made sure that the capital markets, that will also add to speculative behavior, in the stock market in particular. We've also dealt with some of those loopholes by making sure that third-party accounts are not allowed, and these are not abused. Payments from Forex go straight to the beneficiaries, they don't go through other parties. So just closing the loop on aspects of speculative opportunity in the market. We've also managed the impact of the fuel prices by continuously varying the fuel levy, as I already explained. And then also for civil servants, we've tried our best to make sure that we keep adjusting at least the US dollar component to provide a bit of cushion to our civil servants. An issue that we had to deal with in a very bold way was the issue of interest rates, with this Multi-Policy Committee working with the central bank increased the policy rate to 200%, and making sure that the borrowing rate does not fuel speculative behavior. Previously, when it was below inflation, this rate was giving literally free money to speculators. But it was a reason why we had below inflation interest rates in 2019 and 2020. These were 2 years of negative economic growth due to climate change and due to COVID-19. We could not then raise interest rates sharply during these years. We had to wait. We saw the recovery in 2021. So we believe that the timing in 2022 raising these interest rates was the right timing. And I'm sure the governor will elaborate on this issue. So I just have highlighted some of the measures we've taken. One of the measures we took to deal with excess liquidity was to introduce gold coins. And Governor, I think, will elaborate to saying we'll introduce smaller denominations next month, maybe a quarter, half ounce, as well as a tenth of an ounce, just to make sure that we can be more inclusive in the use of this instrument in mopping up liquidity. And I'm aware that so far we've mopped up liquidity to the tune of about 10 billion Zimbabwe dollars. Monetary supply growth has been constrained. The target from M0 growth is actually 0 until year end. We've also constrained the growth of broad money, including, of course, the indirect way to do it is through hiking interest rates, that we've done, but also through managing government contracts, procurement processes, making sure that suppliers to government stick to the official prices and stop or curtail their forward pricing behavior. This is under the value for money process that we've been rolling out, and we believe that really this has borne fruit as a package. Both monetary, fiscal measures as a package have delivered the stability that you currently experiencing in our exchange rate and the declining inflation that we're beginning to see. Then a few words on the external situation in terms of the balance of payments position. This still remains favorable, and we expect to end the year again in positive territory. In fact, in the first half of the year, we actually did record a positive balance of almost $340.5 billion US. The same year last year, same period last year, rather, we actually experienced a deficit. So this year we're in a more favorable position in terms of the balance of payments position. We expect to end the year again in that kind of positive territory. But the picture will be slightly different next year, where we expect a narrowing of this current account position going forward. So really, we don't expect our balance of payment position up to year end to be a negative factor on our accounts. On the contrary, it is a positive factor because we're earning more, bringing in more, receiving more than what is going out. And in terms of exports or import performance or just mere remittances. Last year, with remittances of the order of 1.4 billion or so, and we expect a similar figure, if not slightly higher, by year end. Let me now turn to the budget situation. If you look at the cumulative revenue collections to August 2022, we had collected something like 871 billion Zimbabwe dollars against a target of 685 billion Zimbabwe dollars. So we're well, above that target, and this is pleasing. But also we're aware of the inflationary impact of these revenue receipts. But we still believe, even with that, taking that into account, this is still good performance in terms of revenue raising. If you look at the tax revenue, it's 810 billion against a target of $662 billion, and the non-tax revenue is about 61 billion against a target of 23 billion. So when we project year end, we expect revenues of 1.74 billion. And this is consistent with what I presented in the mid-term review budget statement and supplementary budget debate. So that was revenues. Let me now turn to expenditure. On expenditure, on the back of the supplementary budget, we expect an expenditure of 1.9 trillion by year end. And as expenditure as of August stood at 930.4 billion against a target of 765.2 billion, but it's all headed to 1.9 trillion. We can see, colleagues, that the bulk of the expenditure, the largest share, is the compensation of employees, 27%. Then we have acquisition of non-financial assets, 22%. Goods and services acquisition, this is the supply of goods into government, into these pillars of the state, in fact, 20%. Social benefits at 12%. But the bulk is going towards compensation of employees. And then turning to other aspects in terms of expenditure, if you look at recurrent expenditure, it amounted to 722.5 billion. The bulk of this, as I said, is going to the compensation of employees, in terms of salaries, pensions, social benefits, and also on the use of goods and services. If you look at capital expenditure to the end of August, this is 207.9 billion, this is 208 billion, and it was really gobbled up by the road construction program, the dam construction program, and the public amenities, social services, devolution, intergovernmental fiscal transfers, irrigation development, and grain procurement. Now, taking a look at the fiscal balance, and we've spoken about revenue, and then the expenditure side. The fiscal balance to August 2022 stood at a deficit of 59.8 billion Zimbabwe dollars. To the end of the year, we project the deficit to be at 157.5 billion Zimbabwe dollars, which will be 1.5% of GDP. So we'll remain within the targeted deficit level, which is 1.5% of GDP. In fact, our broader target is the 3% that is set by SADC, and 1.5 is well within the 3%. The picture of public debt is as follows. Basically, in terms of domestic debt, we stand at about 1.3 trillion Zimbabwe dollars. And then in terms of foreign debt, we stand at 13.2 billion Zimbabwe dollars. If you put the two together, converting the US dollars external debt at the current exchange rate, this amounts to 6.2 trillion Zimbabwe dollars, which would amount to about, I would say roughly 57% of GDP. This is again within the NDS target of 65% of GDP, or indeed the Public Debt Management Act ceiling of 70% of GDP. So really our debt level is within our set targets. Our issue has been the liquidity that is needed to settle our arrears externally. That is the issue, and that's what we are working on through our arrears clearance plan. In terms of the detail of the external situation, I've got a table there for what is worth. I said the total is about 13.2 billion. So for example, what we owe to the Paris Club, what we call the non-Paris Club members of the bilaterals, is about 5.5 billion. What we owe to the World Bank, African Development Bank, European Investment Bank, and others is 2.3 billion. And then we have debt that was assumed from the Central Bank in 2015 at 111, and then basically with the Central Bank balance sheet at almost 5 billion, and then RBZ borrowing 1.4 billion, and then the blocked funds that are also clearly part of public debt at about 3.5 billion. You add up all those together, you get to a figure of 13.2 billion. Now, on the issue of the debt for farmers, that is accounted for as part of domestic debt, and I'm happy to report that we are making quite a bit of progress in terms of resolving that debt of 3.5 billion that is owed to farmers through the issuance of some instruments that will allow us to service that debt over a period of time. In terms of the debt, once the farmers have agreed on the specifics of the instrument, I will bring that to Parliament for approval in line with the Public Finance Management Act, the Constitution, as well as the Public Debt Management Act. I now turn to some narration or narrative on the future. Colleagues, we have a narrative about the future with some adjustments in our pre-budget strategy paper. Our growth projection framework for next year is 5%, but we are looking into these numbers. As I said, we've got risks, the slowdown in the global economy and so forth. So we will make some reviews as we go along, but for now, our framework is based on the 5% GDP growth rate going forward. A lot of small numbers in there that you probably can't see from where you are easily, but I'll just give you some highlights. That for 2023, we expect the agricultural sector to recover from the minus 5% growth rate this year to a growth rate of plus 6.7%. The manufacturing sector to grow, mining and quarrying will slow down somewhat to a growth rate of 6.2% from the current 9.5%. Manufacturing will remain almost constant, but with a slight growth of 3.7%. The water sewage sector will see an increase in growth because we're successful, I think, in rolling out of the dams. We expect more water to come through naturally, and the growth rate of 8.7% is projected. Construction sector will slow down somewhat to 5.8% from the current 10.5% growth rate that is projected for 2022. This is due again to the cost of borrowing, which was necessary for stabilization. In terms of the wholesale and retail sector, we expect that to slow down somewhat, again because of the cost of borrowing and the constrained domestic demand due to government action in response to instability. And then the recovery in the accommodation sector, we expect a high growth this year of order of 50%. We expect growth rate of 19% into next year. Let me just see what else I could just pick out. I'll just highlight those for now in terms of the growth rate. So this is what gave us the growth rate of 5% in 2023. As I say, these figures are under review as the situation in the global economy unfolds. In terms of assumptions, of course, we've said the projections will be underpinned by the global economic growth, the slowdown that we anticipate, the favorable commodity prices, normal to above normal rainfall pattern. Although we notice a bit of a change, now we begin to get more rains after Christmas than before Christmas. I'm not an expert, but neither am I a good farmer, but I'm noticing these changes. So perhaps we need to vary the way we inform our farmers on when to move on to the land when the rains start. We expect a stable power supply. In fact, Unit 7 is expected to come on stream before year end, and then 8 units to come on stream in the first quarter of next year. We expect the tight monetary policy and tight fiscal policy to continue in order to ensure and guarantee stability. We can only grow in an environment of stability. And we will continue with our multi-currency regime because we believe it is still the best arrangement as we continue to reform our economy. But of course, one day we will only make sure that we have a monocurrency in a very strict way like other countries do in the form of the Zimbabwe dollar, but we're not there yet. Let me press on. Then in terms of the fiscal envelope, Mr. Speaker, Chairman and colleagues, we expect revenue collections next year of about 3.1 trillion, of which 2.9 trillion will be tax revenue, and the remainder is naturally non-tax revenue. We expect Zimra to be more efficient. They are busy putting in systems, electronic systems, to ensure better revenue collection at our borders, but also domestically. So I'm confident that they'll be able to collect on these resources. So expenditures are projected at 3.4 trillion as against the revenues of 3.1 trillion, of which 44.7% will go towards the compensation of employees at 1.5 trillion, while the capital expenditure will be about 23.7% of total expenditure, among other expenditures. I've got a fiscal framework in the next slide. These are small figures. Maybe let me just run through these. So on the back of the 5% rate of growth, as I said, we have that revenue figure of 3.1 trillion. But maybe what I should bring your attention to here is really the deficit target right at the bottom, where from this figure we expect a budget deficit of minus 1.4% in 2023. So again, we'll be able to remain within that 1.5% target and also the 3% target for SADC. The rest of the figures we can go into detail, but I thought I should highlight those deficit from this fiscal framework. Then, in terms of fiscal thrust, we are about deepening and accelerating economic transformation. So, as we do this, we make sure that this 2023 budget is guided by the fiscal consolidation or tightness that we've seen to entrench macroeconomic stability, but also the monetary tightness of monetary policy that we've seen also will go some way in complementing the tight fiscal policy to ensure stability. Also, government should continue not to dip into the central bank, so there should be non-recourse to the central bank overdraft facilities. And we've been very consistent. Since literally the 1st of January 2019, the central government has not been making use of that overdraft facility. This has gone a long way in making sure that we remain fiscally disciplined. At the risk of repeating, the fiscal deficit is targeted at 1.4%, which is within the 3% target set by SADC. And then we'll continue to make sure that the dictates of the Public Finance Management Act are followed to the letter. They minimize subsidies where it's not necessary, timely disbursements, and making sure that with the value for money principle adhered to right across government and our procurement processes across the entire organs of the state. So in terms of priorities for 2023, as explained in the budget strategy paper that has been circulated, we have the areas that are already defined in the NDS1, which is to maintain, I have to wind up in 5 minutes, I'll do exactly that, Mr. Chairman. We have to maintain macroeconomic stability. If we can achieve the growth rate of the order of 4.6 end of the year, maybe even, I don't think we'll achieve 5%, but we're making all the numbers, but maybe order of 4.3, 4%, that kind of ballpark, we're still ensuring economic growth, and that growth will be higher than the average growth rate for the world, which is at 3.2%, or indeed higher than the rest of Africa. But maintaining stability will support, we want the budget to support value chains development, to support the optimization of value from natural resources. The budget will support infrastructure development, support the digital economy, support the youth, and support women, make sure that gender equity, the principle of gender equity should be supported, including the growth of our SMEs. To support capital development projects through the devolution, gender devolution resources, and again to support our human capital development by availing adequate resources to support our education 5.0 approach, as well as in our primary and secondary level, which is also has become more skills oriented. We'll continue to build confidence around our governance, in ensuring that we have effective institutions for governance, and continue to rebuild our image and re-engage effectively. Colleagues, if anyone doubts that we are in transformative mode already and want to accelerate, just visit Manise and see what's going on there, where basically an iron and steel facility is machinery from the ground. It will produce 1 million tons of steel, of carbon steel going forward. And even the neighbors are asking me about neighbors being other countries. It is truly transformative. We want to support that through incentives. We cannot hand over money to companies, but we use incentives, and that is all within the budget. On industrial natural resources, partly manufacturing, we've put aside SDRs for a retooling program. We've set aside SDRs for supporting the small gold miners. We've set aside again SDR programs with your permission to support the horticulture export sector. All that is transformative to these sectors. On the human capital development, you've seen what our universities have done through their innovation hubs agenda under Education 5.0. They have become productive, and this is really welcome. If you look at our dams, we've done quite a bit in dams development. I recall when we spoke about emotional projects in 2019, Mr. Chair. In fact, we met, I think it was this hotel, but a different room. We talked about emotional projects, such as, if you recall, Rwenya Bridge. Rwenya Bridge is now under construction. We spoke about the Vumu Dam. It is under construction. We talked about the dam in Kai, what's the name again? Anyone? If you've been paying attention. Anyway, there's a dam in Kai that is being built. The name just escapes me as well. Waishangani Dam is under construction. If you look at Tulimanyange Dam, Mr. Chairman, is under construction. So all the kind of emotional projects that we talked about then are being done, and this is really proof of the transformation that is taking place. You have seen the construction taking place around our roads, right through the country. The major roads, Bridge, Harare, the smaller roads in the rural areas, even small airports. If you look at the Buffalo Range Airport, DPF has just completed the upgrade of the Buffalo Range Airport that will go a long way to promoting tourism in that part of the country. Airports in Binga. I'm just highlighting some of the emotional projects that we've discussed in the past. And the budget should continue to accelerate the completion of these projects, in order to accelerate the transformation and to deepen the transformation. Devolution has transformed our local authorities. Even with the funds that we've been able to disperse, devolution has had an impact, and we can go into detail as to what some of these projects are. I'm about to conclude, Chair, and move on to domestic resource mobilization. We said we want to leverage domestic resources, so together we'll raise as much as possible, work with ZIMRA to improve their efficiencies, and raise the requisite resources to support and accelerate economic transformation. So one of the things that ZIMRA will be doing, next slide please, is to complete the acquisition of the terms of the revenue system that is installed to improve our revenue collection. The drones program, which I announced last year, is fully underway. Some of the drones are already in the country to monitor our borders. And I've said that I also want a screen in my office to really know that these drones work, so I can monitor a border or two for the first 2 weeks. I'm not supposed to do that and then give it up to the experts to do. At least I want to know that it works and our borders are being monitored. It's just only one measure, colleagues, for monitoring our borders. There's a lot more that needs to be done with other stakeholders. Investing in the scanners is critical to make sure we don't have leakages. Simplifying our systems for revenue collection, but also doing a lot more research as to how we can further streamline our tax system, make it simpler and so forth. Colleagues, let me stop here. I'm sure there's a lot to say